a devoted nurse, a loving mother, a missing husband. Then, suitcases began washing up along the Virginia shore, stuffed with human remains. The evidence was gruesome, the timeline unbelievable, and the woman at the center, calm, smiling, silent. This is the real story behind Melanie McGuire, the so-called Suitcase Killer. You think you know murder? Think again.
Melanie Maguire seemed to live the American dream. A registered nurse, wife, and mother of 2 young boys, she had a life many envied. She worked at a busy fertility clinic in Woodbridge, New Jersey, where patients trusted her and co-workers respected her. Her husband, Bill McGuire, was a computer specialist at a prestigious university. He was described as kind, dependable, and devoted to their kids. On the outside, they looked like a picture-perfect couple. Friends saw them as loving partners building a future together. They had just closed on a new house in Warren County. It was meant to be a fresh start, a dream home for a growing family. But behind closed doors, cracks were forming. Melanie complained about Bill's temper, and Bill voiced concerns about her distant behavior. Some say the marriage was strained by stress and finances. Others suspected something darker lurking beneath the surface. Melanie had started acting differently at work. She seemed distracted, preoccupied with something she didn't want to talk about. What her co-workers didn't know was that she had started a secret affair. The man? A doctor at the same clinic. Melanie and the doctor grew close. Lunch breaks turned into late-night phone calls. Whispers of love floated behind hospital doors. She told him she was trapped in an unhappy marriage, that she wanted out, but divorce wasn't easy with kids and a mortgage. Then, in late April 2004, Melanie visited an attorney to discuss filing for separation. But she never followed through. Just days later, Bill McGuire vanished. No one could reach him. His phone went silent, and he didn't show up for work. Melanie claimed he stormed off after a fight. She said he was angry and left in their car, taking clothes and cash with him. Friends were concerned, but Melanie stayed calm. She told people not to worry, that Bill had probably gone to Atlantic City. But things took a chilling turn. Days after Bill vanished, a green suitcase washed ashore in Virginia Beach. Inside the suitcase was something horrifying: human remains, wrapped in garbage bags and duct tape. The body had been dismembered. No ID, no wallet. Just a torso, stuffed and discarded like trash. Soon, more suitcases appeared, 2 more, in fact. One with arms and legs, the other with the head. The medical examiner confirmed the cause of death: 2 gunshot wounds to the chest. The body parts all belonged to the same man. Fingerprints revealed the truth: it was William McGuire. His vacation was a lie. He had never made it out of New Jersey alive. Now the question was, who would do this to a devoted father of 2? And why? Police turned to the one person who claimed to know his last movements: his wife, Melanie. And what they found would lead to one of the most shocking trials in New Jersey history. Melanie told police that Bill had left in a rage after an argument. She claimed he drove off alone and never came back. But the timing was suspicious. Just 2 days before his disappearance, she filled a prescription for a powerful sedative. Investigators found that she had purchased a .38 caliber handgun just days before the murder. She had claimed it was for protection. When questioned, Melanie said the gun had been lost or thrown away. Her story changed multiple times. Meanwhile, security footage showed Melanie at a Delaware toll booth just hours after Bill was last seen. The problem? She told police she had been home with the kids that night. The footage suggested otherwise. Detectives began to track her every move. Phone records, E-ZPass data, and credit card receipts painted a different story. A plastic bag found with the body matched the kind used at the fertility clinic where Melanie worked. Hair and fiber evidence from the suitcases raised even more questions. They suggested the killer had access to both the home and medical materials. Friends of the couple came forward. They said the marriage had grown toxic. Melanie wanted out, but not through divorce. Divorce meant sharing custody, splitting assets, and starting over. Murder, on the other hand, was final. The affair with her co-worker continued in secret. He claimed he had no idea what she was planning. But Melanie's actions after Bill's death didn't sit right. She quickly tried to claim his life insurance. She also tried to have his name removed from the new house's deed just days after he vanished. Police believe she drugged him, shot him, dismembered his body, and drove hours south to dispose of the remains. The choice of location, Virginia Beach, was likely intentional. She may have hoped ocean currents would erase the evidence, but the suitcases didn't sink. They washed ashore, one by one, telling the story she hoped would stay buried. The deeper investigators dug, the clearer the picture became. Melanie was no grieving widow, she was the prime suspect. Still, she denied everything. She insisted she was being framed, that someone else had killed Bill, but the evidence was mounting, and the prosecution was preparing for trial. Melanie McGuire's trial began in 2007, 3 years after Bill's murder. Cameras weren't allowed, but the press covered every detail. The courtroom was packed. Some came out of curiosity. Others came seeking justice for Bill McGuire. The prosecution laid out a chilling narrative. They said Melanie used her medical knowledge to commit the perfect crime. They claimed she drugged Bill, shot him twice, and dismembered him with surgical precision in their bathroom. They showed the timeline, prescription records, toll booth images, phone pings, and suitcase locations, all pointing to Melanie. The defense pushed back hard. They said the evidence was circumstantial and lacked a clear murder weapon. Melanie's lawyers argued that she had no history of violence, no prior record. No witnesses saw the crime. They painted her as a hardworking mom caught in a nightmare. A woman grieving, not a cold-blooded killer. But the jurors heard something different. The gun purchase, the lies, the timing, and the motive, they couldn't ignore it. The most damning moment came when police revealed she had used E-ZPass on the exact route to Virginia Beach that matched the travel timeline of when the suitcases were dumped. She had no explanation. Even her calm demeanor worked against her. Jurors said she appeared too composed, too rehearsed. Expert witnesses testified about blood spatter, cutting patterns, and the likelihood the dismemberment happened at home. A neighbor recalled hearing strange noises one night, thuds, dragging, water running for hours. The doctor she had an affair with took the stand. He admitted their relationship but denied knowledge of any plan. Still, his testimony showed Melanie had a motive, a future without Bill, but with someone else. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Tension hung in the air when they returned to the courtroom. The verdict: guilty. Melanie Maguire was convicted of first-degree murder and other related charges. She showed little emotion as the sentence was read. Life in prison with no chance of parole for decades. But even after the conviction, some questions remained. After the trial, the story didn't end. Melanie filed multiple appeals, claiming she was wrongly convicted. She said the evidence was mishandled, that jurors were biased, that the real killer was still out there. Her legal team pushed for a retrial, citing gaps in forensic work and issues with how the case was presented. But each appeal failed. courts upheld the conviction. The evidence, they ruled, was strong and clear. In interviews from prison, Melanie continued to protest her innocence. She insisted she loved her husband. She claimed she had been framed, perhaps by someone close to Bill or someone she didn't even know. Her 2 sons were left to grow up without either parent. One murdered, the other imprisoned for life. The house they bought together was sold. The clinic where she worked moved on. Life continued, but the shadows remained. The case became the subject of documentaries, podcasts, and books. Viewers were captivated by the double life Melanie led. The media dubbed her the Suitcase Killer, a name that would follow her forever. To this day, some still debate her guilt. Was she a mastermind killer? Or a woman caught in a web of tragic choices? What's certain is that a man died a brutal death. His body thrown away like garbage. A father erased from his children's lives. And a woman who once healed others as a nurse was now behind bars for taking a life. The story haunts many. The suitcases, the lies, the calmness of it all. It was like something out of fiction. But it wasn't fiction. It was real. A chilling reminder of how quickly love can turn to murder. Melanie Maguire remains in prison today, serving a life sentence in New Jersey. Her name, once anonymous, now lives on in one of the state's most infamous murder cases. And those green suitcases will forever symbolize a life unraveled by deceit, desire, and death.
Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to a new deep dive.
Hi there.
We are taking a stack of sources, articles, research, notes that you, the listener, brought us, and we are diving deep into one of the most chilling true crime stories out of New Jersey.
Yeah, it really is. Often called the Suitcase Killer case. It centers on Melanie Maguire.
That's the one.
And our mission here really is to dig into all that material you sent and pull out the absolute key takeaways. Give you like a shortcut to understanding what happened.
Right, why it mattered and maybe what questions are still kind of hanging out there.
Exactly.
And the scene the sources set for us right at the beginning, it almost feels like fiction, doesn't it?
It really does. You've got this picture of a seemingly perfect American dream, New Jersey.
Yeah, a registered nurse, a computer specialist, 2 young boys.
And they were even closing on a brand new dream home. It sounds, idyllic.
Totally. But like you said, from the outside.
Right. The sources are pretty clear that behind that perfect facade, well, their marriage was under significant strain behind closed doors.
And then the shocking discovery that just ripped away that image brought this private tragedy crashing into public view.
The suitcases.
Yeah, the discovery of human remains stuffed into suitcases that washed ashore. Just horrific.
So let's back up a bit. From the outside, like the sources describe, Melanie and Bill McGuire, they look like a couple building a really beautiful future.
Right. Melanie was a registered nurse, worked at a busy fertility clinic there in Woodbridge, New Jersey.
And she's described as, trusted by her patients, well-respected by coworkers.
And Bill, he was a computer specialist, worked at a prestigious university. The sources paint him as kind, dependable, really devoted to their kids.
So friends saw them as just this picture-perfect couple.
Pretty much.
And they just closed on this new house, bigger place, in Warren County.
Yeah, meant to be a fresh start, a dream home for their growing family.
It really seemed like they were on solid ground moving forward.
But as we know, the sources reveal that beneath that perfect surface, the cracks were already starting to show.
Definitely. Melanie complained about Bill having a temper.
And Bill, he apparently voiced concerns about Melanie being distant, kind of withdrawn.
Yeah, and the source material suggests, the usual suspects, stress, finances, they definitely played a role in ramping up that tension.
Meanwhile, something else was going on. Melanie started acting differently at work.
Distracted.
Yeah, distracted, preoccupied. That's what the sources say.
And this distraction had a very specific source, didn't it?
It did. A secret affair.
With a doctor.
Working right there at the same fertility clinic.
Wow. Okay. And the sources, they detail how quickly that affair grew, right?
Yeah, lunch breaks turning into late-night phone calls.
There were even mentions of, like, whispers of love behind hospital doors.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of dramatic phrasing, but it gets the point across.
Right, and Melanie reportedly confided in this doctor, told him she felt trapped, unhappy in the marriage.
She wanted out.
She wanted out, but divorce felt like this huge hurdle. You know, kids, the mortgage.
Makes sense. But what makes this particularly significant, according to the sources anyway, is that just days before Bill vanished, Melanie actually went to see an attorney.
To discuss filing for separation?
Exactly. But then she never followed through. Never actually filed anything.
And then, late April 2004, Bill McGuire just vanishes.
Gone. No one could reach him. Phone silent. Didn't show up for work. Just disappeared.
So what was Melanie's explanation? To the police, to friends?
She said he'd stormed off after a fight, got angry, left in their car.
Took clothes and cash, supposedly?
Yeah, that was her story.
And her demeanor during all this? The sources describe her as, well, remarkably calm.
Yeah, telling people not to worry. She even suggested he'd probably just gone down to Atlantic City.
Yeah.
You know, to blow off steam.
Just went to AC. Okay.
But days after Bill vanished, things took a truly horrific turn.
This is where it gets really grim. A green suitcase washes ashore, Virginia Beach.
Miles away.
And the contents. Just unimaginable. Human remains.
Wrapped in garbage bags, duct tape.
Yeah.
It was a dismembered torso. No ID, no wallet.
And then soon after, 2 more suitcases are found nearby.
One with arms and legs, the other. The head.
Oh, God.
The medical examiner confirmed, yeah, all the body parts belonged to the same man.
And the cause of death.
2 gunshot wounds to the chest.
And the ID.
It came through fingerprints. It was William McGuire.
So suddenly, Melanie's whole story, him taking off for a vacation,
completely falls apart. It was a lie. He never made it out of New Jersey alive.
The immediate question police faced was just stark, terrifying.
Who would do this to a seemingly devoted father, and why?
And given Melanie's account of his last movements, I mean, investigators naturally turned their focus to her first, right?
Absolutely. She claimed to know when he left, how he left.
And she still denied knowing anything about what really happened.
Yeah, maintained that story. Bill just left in a rage after an argument. That's it.
But investigators started digging, and they started uncovering details that, well, the sources say were highly suspicious.
Things that started to contradict her story.
Right. The timing of certain actions, for one. Just 2 days before he disappeared, she'd filled a prescription for a powerful sedative.
Chloral hydrate, I think it was. Strong stuff.
And even more concerning, investigators found she had purchased a gun.
A .38 caliber handgun. Again, just days before the murder.
And her reason. She claimed it was for protection.
But when they pressed her about that gun specifically, her story changed.
How so?
Well, first protection, then maybe it was lost. Maybe she'd thrown it away. It wasn't consistent.
That definitely raises some immediate red flags for investigators.
Do you think so?
And then came the concrete evidence, stuff that directly contradicted her claims about that night he disappeared.
Like the security footage.
Exactly. It showed Melanie at a Delaware toll booth, just hours after Bill was last seen alive.
Which completely undermined her claim that she'd been home with the kids the whole night. Delaware south of their home.
Right. Investigators could track her movements pretty precisely, using phone records, credit card receipts.
And crucially, her Easy Pass data, which for anyone listening who doesn't know, it's an electronic toll system.
Right. It gives time-stamped records, shows exactly where and when her car passed through specific toll booths.
And it placed her vehicle traveling south at a very key time.
The sources also point to forensic evidence found with the remains.
Yeah, the plastic bags used to wrap the body parts.
They match the kind used at the fertility clinic where Melanie worked.
That's specific.
Yeah.
And damning.
And there was hair and fiber evidence, too, found inside the suitcases.
Suggesting the killer had access to materials from both the home and medical environments.
It all seemed to be pointing back to someone very close to Bill, someone with specific knowledge or access.
And then friends of the couple started talking to police more.
Saying the marriage had grown toxic.
Yeah, and that Melanie definitely wanted out. That seemed clear to people around them.
And the suggested motive, as presented by the prosecution later and detailed in the sources, it went beyond just being unhappy.
Right. It implied she wanted out, but not through a divorce.
Why not divorce, though?
Well, the sources suggest the reasons cited were things like sharing custody, splitting assets, starting over financially. It gets messy.
Whereas the implication from the prosecution was murder is final.
And potentially allows her to keep more. The house, maybe insurance money.
All while her affair with the doctor was still going on secretly.
Although the doctor himself claimed he had no idea. No idea what she might have been planning.
Right. The sources also detail Melanie's actions after Bill vanished. Actions investigators found highly suspicious.
Like trying to claim his life insurance policy really quickly.
Yeah, that seems fast. And even more striking, she tried to get his name removed from the deed of that new house.
The dream house.
Just days after he disappeared, before the body was even identified.
Wow. Okay. So based on all this accumulating evidence, the police really started to solidify.
What did they think happened?
They believe she drugged him, possibly, with that sedative she got the prescription for.
Then shot him.
Shot him, yes.
Yeah.
Then dismembered his body. Likely, they thought, in their own home bathroom.
And then drove hours south to the coast to dispose of the remains.
The location, Virginia Beach, it was probably chosen intentionally.
Yeah.
Hoping the ocean currents would just
make it all disappear.
Carry the suitcases far away, erase the evidence forever. That seems like the logical assumption.
But the crucial mistake, the miscalculation, was that the suitcases didn't sink.
Nope. They washed ashore, one by one, revealing the horrific truth she had tried maybe to hide.
So the deeper investigators dug.
The clearer the picture became for them anyway. Melanie wasn't just a grieving widow. They concluded she was the prime suspect.
Yet through all of this, she kept denying it.
Absolutely. Insisted she was being framed. Maintained her innocence.
Which brings us to the trial. It began in 2007, right? About 3 years after the murder.
Yeah. Courtroom packed. Press covering every detail, though cameras weren't actually allowed inside.
And the prosecution, they laid out this chilling narrative, meticulously constructed.
They argued Melanie used her medical knowledge, used it to commit what she thought would be the perfect crime.
Claiming she drugged Bill, shot him twice.
And then dismembered his body with what they called surgical precision.
In their bathroom. Suggesting it was cold, calculated, maybe even using skills or tools from her nursing job.
And the evidence they presented just painted this stark timeline. You had the prescription records.
The Delaware toll booth image.
Phone location data, those crucial easy pass records showing her trip south.
And the locations where the suitcases washed up?
It all pointed directly, they argued, straight to Melanie.
Okay, but the defense fought back hard, right? What was their argument?
They hammered on the evidence being entirely circumstantial.
Meaning no smoking gun, literally.
Right. No direct proof like an eyewitness seeing the murder or a confession. Just a collection of facts and circumstances that the jury had to connect.
They pointed out no murder weapon was ever found.
True. And that Melanie had no prior history of violence, no criminal record.
They tried to paint her as this hard-working mom caught in a nightmare, grieving her husband, not some cold-blooded killer capable of, well, that kind of brutality.
But the jury heard some powerful counterarguments, evidence that really challenged that picture.
Like the gun purchase just before the murder.
The lies about the gun, her lies about where she was that night.
The suspicious timing of getting those sedatives.
And the motive. The prosecution really pushed the affair, the desire to be free without a divorce.
And wasn't there a particularly damning moment in court related to the travel?
Yeah, the sources highlight this. When the police presented the Easy Pass data, it showed her transponder pinging along the exact route to Virginia Beach.
At the exact time frame consistent with when the suitcases would have needed to be dumped.
And she had no plausible explanation for that journey. None at all.
That's tough to explain away.
Very. Sources also mentioned her demeanor during the trial might have hurt her.
Yeah.
She appeared, at least to some jurors looking back, maybe too composed, too rehearsed.
Lacking the kind of raw emotion they might have expected from an innocent, grieving widow?
Possibly. It's subjective, of course, but it was noted.
And there were expert witnesses, too.
Oh, yeah. Testifying about blood spatter patterns, the cutting patterns on the body parts.
Suggesting the dismemberment likely happened in a bathroom, like at home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Supporting the prosecution's theory, it happened there.
There was even neighbor testimony, wasn't there?
There was. Someone recalled hearing strange noises one night from the McGuire house around the time Bill disappeared.
What kind of noises?
Thuds, dragging sounds, and water running for hours and hours.
Wow. And the doctor she had the affair with, he testified.
He did. She admitted the relationship, but he denied knowing anything about a plan to kill Bill.
But his testimony still kind of reinforced the motive, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It showed Melanie had this clear desire for a future without Bill. A future where she could potentially be with someone else. It gave her a reason.
So the jury goes out to deliberate.
For 3 days.
And when they came back?
Guilty. Melanie Maguire was convicted of first-degree murder and other related charges.
And the sentence?
Life in prison, with no chance of parole for decades. She reportedly showed very little emotion when it was read.
But the story didn't just end there with the verdict.
No, not at all. Based on the sources, Melanie has filed multiple appeals over the years,
Consistently claiming she was wrongly convicted.
arguing evidence was mishandled, jurors were biased, claiming the real killer is still out there.
But how did those appeals go?
Each one failed. The courts kept upholding the conviction. They ruled the evidence presented at trial was strong and clear enough to support the jury's decision.
And in interviews from prison,
She's continued to protest her innocence, still claims she was framed.
the aftermath of this case, it's just devastating, especially for the family.
Absolutely. Her 2 sons left to grow up without either parent. Father murdered mother in prison for it. It's tragic.
And that new house, the dream home.
Eventually sold. The clinic where she worked, they moved on from the scandal.
And the case itself, it captured public attention, right?
Massively. That blend of a seemingly perfect life and such a gruesome, shocking discovery. It became the subject of countless documentaries, podcasts, books.
People were captivated by that idea of the double life she seemed to lead.
And the media quickly gave her that nickname, the Suitcase Killer.
A name that's become inextricably linked to her.
And the sources show, even today, some people still debate her guilt.
Really, even with all that evidence.
Yeah. Was she truly this cold mastermind killer who meticulously planned the perfect crime? Or was she, like her defense argued, maybe just a woman caught in a terrible web of bad choices and circumstantial evidence?
But what remains undeniably certain is the brutal reality.
A man died. A violent, brutal death. His body treated with just utter disregard.
A father erased from his children's lives in the most horrific way possible.
And a woman who was trained to heal people as a nurse ended up behind bars for taking a life. The contrast is stark.
It really is a story that haunts you. A chilling reminder of how quickly a seemingly idyllic life, when fueled by deceit and desire, can just completely unravel into murder.
And Melanie McGuire, she remains in prison today, serving her life sentence in New Jersey.
Her name, once known as a respected nurse, now lives on in the history books as one of the state's most infamous murder cases.
And those 3 green suitcases, mentioned again and again in the sources, they'll probably forever symbolize a life unraveled by deceit, desire, and ultimately death.
So here's something to think about for you, the listener. When you look at all that extensive evidence presented at trial, the jury's decision, the fact that courts upheld that verdict, yet you hear about Melanie Maguire's consistent, persistent claims of innocence from prison over all these years. How do you weigh that? How do you weigh the circumstantial evidence against that persistent denial?
Yeah, what does that contradiction leave you wondering?